Hi, Bindu.
Hi. Hi, Gayatri.
Welcome to Software People Stories. And I warmly welcome you as part of the Women's March month of episodes, where we are featuring unique and stellar women who have great accomplishments in the field. So, once again, welcome and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Gayatri.
So I know you've been a career Wiproite and also hold a very high position in the cloud computing area in Wipro. So before we get started, why don't we introduce yourself and your journey so far?
Sure. So I'm born, brought up, raised in Bangalore. So complete Bangalorean. Did my schooling here, and then went to Tumkur SIT to do my engineering in electrical and electronics. And from there, after I came out, I started my career as a C programming developer. And from there, I picked my interest in embedded systems. I learned embedded systems and got into that domain. I worked on embedded systems for consumer electronics domain. I worked on all layers of embedded systems. I started with assembly language programming, device drivers, firmware, middleware, all of it. And I worked in Tata Elxsi back then. And after a couple of years with Tata Elxsi, I moved to Wipro, where I am for the last 16 years now. So I have worked for 21 years in all, and of my 2 decade career, the first decade has been completely on embedded systems. And when I moved to Wipro, only the domain changed. I started working on healthcare as a domain. But technology remained almost the same. But when I moved, I was given the task of working on middleware mostly, not on the lower layers like I was used to. So here I had to work on Python, and this, remember, was like 16 years ago. 16 years ago, Python was not a popular language as it is today. So for me, at least, Python was just a snake back then. So learning Python, I was like wondering, what am I doing? I mean, I'm a C programmer. I've been working on C, C++ all the while, and now been tasked with Python. I didn't like it in the beginning, but on hindsight, when you connect the dots, how things help you. Unknown things that I've picked up. At that time, it was quite unknown, and what am I getting into? But I learned Python. I did that part of task, moved on from there. And then as I grew, I started handling small teams, more technically hand-holding them, being a technical leader. Then moved into project management. I started doing project management. And I have been a part of this, my embedded journey. I've also been part of IP product development, a personal healthcare device. And here we have developed, Bluetooth profiles, and which was missing in the Linux kernel back then, for HTTP profile for connectivity. Here, the whole thing was about you collect data, the vital signs from digital stethoscope, ECG, and other things at home for people to use. And you draw out data from there and send it out to clinicians, and then you can also send it to caretakers and have a trend analytics done, have video conferencing done. So this is a personal healthcare device as such. It's a complete product, and I was part of it for 3 years. So, and that is in complete my embedded journey. This was until 2012. 2013, just a decade ago, I stepped into cloud data platforms and AI. And even then, back then, cloud was just beginning to shape up, that was a buzz thing that was just starting on. So from embedded, when I moved to cloud again, I did not know cloud. Yeah, it would be very interesting to note that when I moved into this group, this cloud data platform and AI group within Wipro was a small startup within that large enterprise. So it was just a new group that was getting formed, and I was a fifth member in the team. And today we are over 1,200 in the team. Over the 1 decade, we have grown, and I have seen the growth from a handful to where we are today. And when I moved into this group, and there was an interview to move, even internally within Wipro, when you move from group to group, it's a totally new job. So when in the interview, I was asked, so you must be familiar with Amazon. And Amazon back then for me was just a retailer. I didn't even know Amazon was cloud. So that was my know-how on cloud when I really got into cloud. And But from there to being a cloud advisor, I worked in the role of cloud advisory on Amazon Web Services, and I've done different roles on working on cloud itself as technical program manager, handling multiple projects with me, and setting up a cloud center of excellence on Amazon Web Services for a customer, working with that same customer for 4 years in different roles. And it's been an exciting journey, and that was more so my focus was just with cloud and cloud infra mainly. But from there I moved back into the same group. I mean, I was part of the same group, but I was part of the delivery per se when I was 4 years with this account. When I moved back into the practice that I belonged, I took up a practice role which I'm still in. And that practice role is I'm a sector head for the practice. Multiple sectors fall with me: consumer, healthcare, medical devices, transportation, logistics, and several sectors. So I have a lot of accounts that I handle as part of these sectors. A few to name: FedEx, Uber, Meta, Yahoo. Some of these accounts are what I handle. And in my role here, I do an end to end, in the sense like I lead and drive solutions with customers along with the sales team, and to get new deals in. And I have a team of architects who work on the solution, but I drive it, and we proactively pitch solutions to customers. We also respond to proposals from customers, reactive proposals also. And once the deal is through, I also ensure that the deal is the order is now estimated correctly, and we have the right talent identified, and you can run it smoothly with a project manager or a delivery team in place. And even after that, I still handhold the project till things are all smooth, and keep a touch point with the project regularly, meet customers on their reviews, monthly reviews. And so this is my end-to-end role that I do today in multiple accounts that I just mentioned. And all the projects that we work today are on data platforms and AI. So here my focus shifted from more pure cloud infra into data platforms and AI, which was again not a forte for me. So throughout my career, 21 years, it's been new learnings all the while. For me, that's what I look for. I believe in looking at change that way, and that's what's got me here today.
Wow, I have so many questions to ask you, Bindu. Let me ask you from the top, right? What, um, I mean, what got you started in software? Was it after college, before college? I mean, normally when we call this Rishi Moolam, right? Where did it all start?
It started in my first job actually, because till then in college, yes, we did have programming, and we had back then more kind of Fortran programming, and a little bit of C, but not much. But programming was tough for all us students back then. And internet connectivity was more limited to, you go to the internet parlors, and you don't have it much at home. And even if it's at home, it's a dial up, and the connections are slow, and it's not what it is today. So we were not exposed to opportunities and searches like you get in a click of a button now, back then 21 years ago. So the programming exposure I've had was very limited in college, and I'm not from my branch was not computer science per se, it was electrical and electronics. So we did have computer science but as a subject, but it was not detailed into that. So when I came out and I took up my first job, I was actually a design engineer in an alternator department in Kirloskar. That was my first job. There it was totally an electrical domain, the domain that I studied in. And while I was doing that, we were part of the designing alternators, when we had to do a lot of manual work there in terms of doing and redoing quotations for the alternators. When you change the rotor and the stator, when you're having those design changes, what would be the cost, and how much you can optimize and how much you cannot, and things like that, which we used to manually be doing it. So I suddenly thought, okay, this is anyway no value add. You keep just changing the width and the length, and then why not do a small program for it? And I suggested this to my design head, and nobody there, I mean, there were a bunch of mechanical engineers doing CAD drawings, and there were the rest of it were electrical engineers doing the design. That's about it. So when I suggested this, it was a new idea for them, and I was just an apprentice, just learning, fresh from college. So they said, yeah, why not go ahead, try what you want. So that they gave me the autonomy to try what I wanted. And then there was, I had fun doing C programming, learning, and I had a lot of books with me because though back then you can't have searches, then I learned C so well that I could do a lot of programs. And then even for other departments, we did it for them. And that was my starting with C programming as such. And then when I learned C programming and I said, okay, I have an electrical electronics background and I know C programming, why not combine the both and get into embedded systems? And embedded systems was what is AI today back then. So I dabbled into that, learned
Or
that,
embedded and IoT, right? It's a combination because
right, right.
Internet of Things, literally, those are embedded is like, of course, the capability of embedded things have changed
Right.
dramatically from there. But
Correct.
yeah, it's very, very different now.
Ah. So then I didn't know, okay, how do I learn embedded now? And I was working a full day job, and after job, I looked for some place who they were teaching embedded course. I picked that up. I did a short course for 8 months, and after office, I used to travel there, finish it, come back, and that was interesting for me. And so that moved me to a different world altogether. So from there, after 2 years of being in Kirloskar, I moved into Tata Elxsi and actually started working on embedded systems. So that's my journey. That's the start of my journey.
Wow, sounds extremely exciting, Bindu. And see, I think the passion to learn, and most importantly, today, software engineers, we talk about so many different of them: DB engineer, data engineer, database engineer, and the cloud engineer, and then front end, and then back end, lots of things. But when you share your story about creating your own piece of functionality, that is like a full stack. You create your own system, you create your own requirements, design it, develop it, and show it also, right? I think the times have changed, but I think you have come back a full circle, right? Now we are talking more of a full stack engineer and say, are you able to speak to the customer, understand the requirement, and are you able to design for the scale, right? I think how have you do you see evolution happen, particularly when you have such a large team where you are working with a team? How are you seeing that change within yourself as well as with your team?
Yeah, what's preferred today is to have full stack, knowledge of a full stack when you work in software. So, but even specialized skills are valued, not that they are not. When you have, for example, the data science projects that I handle, you have data engineers are the most crucial there because they are the ones who are cleaning up the data which is required for the AI engineers to work on. So you have one team that's doing data engineering. You have another team that's using the data that's coming out of what the data engineers work, and then they work models over it, and then they get out their accuracy. But they're not independent teams per se. So there's always a lot of intersection, and the more the intersection, the better. Because both teams, first thing is obviously collaboration, the other is one should know what the other needs and the other should know what they're providing. So unless you have a clean and good data, you're not going to get accuracy in spite of having your best models in place. So that's the whole thing about. And that's what I see is valuable today in skill wise, that even if you are somebody, let's say you are a UI engineer, but you are specialized in UI, but you also know what are the calls that below your UI happens, what happens at the back end. You should have a breadth over there, if not a depth, because you may be specialized and have a depth in one place, but you also should know what's happening behind the scenes. Just not limit yourself to what you're doing, because then that's what gets to be valuable. Makes you very valuable. Like for instance, had never worked on UI, and when I worked on that product development that I told you, I was asked to work on UI, and I was like, okay. And the UI framework that they chose was not the usual React JS, or because it's an embedded system. And so they wanted to work on GTK plus. And GTK plus, I don't even know if you have heard of. I had never heard of it at that time. And I mean, I thought, what do I do with this GTK plus? How do I learn it? Now I go and went and bought a book on GTK plus, and I quickly learned some bit of it. I started implementing it. I learned it. So I'm not a UI expert. I don't have a depth on UI, but I have worked on UI. and I know the whole behind the scenes, the back end portion is where my expertise is. But if you talk to me in the UI language, I still know it because I've worked some bit on UI, whether it's a React.js technology or it is a GTK plus technology. UI is UI. So I have worked on it. So and that has helped me as you grow in your career. The more the breadth you have is what helps. And when you have, you may never know the problems you're getting into, the use cases that you're getting into, the discussions that you're getting into with customers may involve a lot of things that is unknown to you. It's definitely that you will fall back on a subject matter expert when it comes to it. But the first level of discussion, you cannot be dumb. You cannot say that, yeah, that's some skill that I don't even know. You're supposed to speak on everything. Yeah. So then that's what makes it valuable. You have to be a full stack.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is the first time somebody has given me a different definition of full stack. Excellent, Bindu. All right. So let me ask you questions around how did the transition of moving from an embedded. See, embedded, if you look at it, you're actually doing C, C++ programming at
Hmm.
the device level.
Yeah.
And not to say that no, it's not easy. It is in a different plane, right? In fact, the payload and how many sizes of the payload, all these are very different. We're talking about, and you're actually talking about now working in cloud, which is the other side of the spectrum. Here, everywhere, even processor speed to size, everything is scalable. So if there's a need, you can just scale it. Obviously, there is a FinOps world that comes in mind where everything is financials, right? So you have to ensure that those are correct. But how did that change to you? Did that how did you adapt? In fact, in terms of learning, in terms of moving from coding at the embedded side to coding for in the cloud, because in the end of the day, right, cloud is all about speed in which you are able to move things. Now, while embedded, you do it once and do it right, because if the system goes out, uh, many times we never used to have 5G before, where you can't just keep changing the software in the embedded system once so I mean, what kind of an adaptability that you had to bring in, not withholding about the software part of it, but you as a person uh, have to bring about the change. Because when I looked at your profile, that was a very unique thing in terms of moving from embedded to cloud. I just wanted to understand your own perspective. Did you seek for it? A, B, how did you adapt for it?
See, technology wise, why I came into here, the group is, as I told you, right? When I was I was interviewing for the cloud data AI group. I didn't know what Amazon is, so why would they take me in? I mean, I'm a complete C++ person. So I was so surprised that the person was looking through my profile and said, no, but you know Python, you can easily learn cloud, he said. And I was like, so this is what I was hinting at when I spoke earlier, that Python was such a unheard of language 16 years ago when I was working on it. And I was thinking I'm so doing something which is a time waste. Why am I even learning it? But 16 years later, not really 16 years, 10 years, 6 years later, 6 years later, when I was moving into cloud, that was about 10 years ago, that is what got me into cloud actually, because I had this Python skills and they said that they thought that that would be the best thing to have as a skill to move on cloud. So technology wise, that's what helped me, because what you use in cloud in terms of automation, you use a lot of Python. So since I knew that was what was helping me in terms of technology. But otherwise, the perspective wise, what I was working, how I was working with embedded and embedded systems to what I'm working on cloud is totally different, obviously. But I felt it more easier to work on cloud, because in embedded you have a lot of constraint. You don't have space, you don't have storage, you have limitations on everything. You here is not that much. It's not that much. And even here again, when you work with cloud, when you have IoT use cases, you need to do real time streaming. You need to get the data from devices that are embedded, and you move that also onto cloud. So that's where my again my my earlier skills come in. Whereas I know that, how this real time data, you that's the output of our embedded system, right? So that, how do you handle in cloud, is a totally different thing, how you than how you handle a batch data, any data that is otherwise coming in, right? So these are some of the things that eased me into working on cloud. But otherwise, what was different is obviously learning so many various services that the cloud providers provide both, and having getting to know how you're going to migrate things onto cloud, and doing a profiling onto understanding what the applications are, what their need is. Some applications, it is not even worth digging in to make sure that you're going to refactor it. Better you just lift and shift and leave it there on cloud and later have a look at it. Or you think that you may come to a judgment that maybe we can refactor this application and move it on cloud, so tomorrow you can have it, you can use the advantage of all cloud, all that cloud provides. So these are some things that I learned while working on a lot of migrations. And apart from migrations, when you're setting up new things on cloud, like recently what we're doing is we're getting a data of a customer onto cloud, and from there running the AI analytics. So when you're doing this kind of a move also, the volume, the size, the everything matters. And how the connect, this is a hybrid cloud mainly, so some of it remains on prem, some of it is moving to cloud. So it's a lot of, I should say, a lot of estate that you have to look at. It's a very good learning. I had senior members, technical mentors in my team. The 5-member team I was talking about, I was the fifth one to get into, but I looked up to my seniors. I had my technical mentors who really were my cloud gurus and taught me. It was not all self-learned, but yeah, they were there to handhold. They were there in the first few projects with me, till I'm confident and I could move on. So I think I came and assimilated well into moving from embedded into cloud.
Wow, that's a great story. I want to say, talk about, I think this is a story that you should put it in your LinkedIn also, saying uh, from macro, setup to micro setup. I think I know it all sort of thing. So, you mentioned about deriving intelligence, right? Most of the time when the ROI for cloud setup happens, it is about not only scalability but also availability of data in the same place, and ability to be it isolation of problem or monitoring, or a lot of things come right off the bat. And it means that the amount of time that your own internal people have to do work on those particular things will reduce. So did it mean that your own domain deepening, your team's domain deepening, did it change over a period of time? I know you mentioned about joining in the healthcare domain. Did it stay through the period, or you stayed in the cloud world and then domain became agnostic? How did that happen?
Yeah, domain, yes, it does matter, but in a service industry, when you're working, you're not constant with a particular domain. Yeah, you will move from one domain across another, and cloud is mostly works like a horizontal across. It is mostly domain agnostic, but it is not completely. Like I'll tell you, for instance, when I was working, I worked in an oil and gas for an oil and gas customer for a long time, not only healthcare and consumer, but yeah. So in this oil and gas, when you talk about data, is data and data formats that come out of oil wells, or the well, the rigging devices, and the seismic data that comes, they're all of a specific format. They're not they're standard format for oil and gas industry, but unlike for the other domains, right? It is not the same for healthcare or any other. So you really need that domain expertise when you really need to work on that data. What is a standard format? How do I create a standard platform for such a data? And the kind of the nature of data from domain to domain will also vary. So a lot of domain expertise is, yes, required. In our service industry, how we work is, we are technologists who work on the technology, the horizontal piece. while we collaborate with the domain consultants who are separate groups within our industry for all the domain expertise that we need. So it's a collaboration. We really can't get into the domain depth in every domain that we work with our technology. So we are technology experts. We take our technology across to different domains. While we work with the domain experts in that particular domain, we have a domain and consulting team, right? So they will help us out on what really we need to know as part of the domain aspects of what we work. But more so, yes, we can spread this technology across through all. I mean, it's anyway penetrated everywhere, right? Cloud data AI is across all domains today. So there is nothing that technology can limit, but yes, you need to understand the domain.
Sorry about that call that I had to take, Bindu. So, when we speak about domain, right, I like the way you're saying about oil and gas has a different format and expectation are different. And as you mentioned, right, the real time batch requirements. I mean, even in financial industry, many of the compliance reports are more batch like. You have to do it. But obviously, when you talk about payments, these are all instantaneous. So, what type of complexity does that come into play when we talk about your implementation in the cloud and when you migrate it from the on-prem to so, and more importantly, how do you sensitize your team in for about those nuances? Sometimes when we do those migration programs, while it may be very obvious for the customer, being in the service provider, it may not be so obvious. And those are unsaid rules per se, right? How are you, I mean, enabling your team in ensuring that they have their eyes wide open and keeping watch for all of those?
Yeah, so that comes with experience since we have a mix of a team with at all levels, right? Juniors, mid-level, and seniors. So we definitely run our designs with the seniors and get their reviews and implement them because with their experience they do know that when, for instance, if you're working with millions of records coming in at a time, it will be a different design altogether to handle, though you have services on the cloud that will say that this is a data ingestion service, you can just use that service and get all the data in there. But when you actually implement and the design will also be reviewed, everything is fine and done. But when you say that you have, let's say, some 27 million records coming in a day, and you should look at data duplication, you should look at data loss, you should look at all that you should look at. And when that happens, the using the service directly may not work. So you may have to get in something else open source, for example Kafka has a piece in between, and then you ease out your, before you do your data transformation, you bring in that. So these are some things that come by learning. And yeah, even after you design and even after you've reviewed, sometimes these things are not caught easily because not everybody would have experienced such a use case. It could be one of the first use case that you're trying to do something like this. So these things will happen, but generally for all other things we definitely have multiple reviews at senior levels and they guide the team, and we are more or less covered, and people learn also on the way, right? But there are new learnings also, like as I mentioned, we recently had it in a project where we learned that no, what we designed and we thought didn't work really in implementation. So you change it on the ground, then you go back to customer, make them understand that these are not things that we foresaw really. So we make some small tweaks, we may have to redesign and replan our project plan, and our iteration will change, our sprints will change, and we'll go on.
Nice. I agree. I think not everything can be foreseen, in particularly when you're doing transformation on a legacy system, right? It takes a bit of human ingenuity to say,
Yeah.
okay, can we do known things, and then as and when we uncover, we keep moving. So when you are talking about a team of 5 to 1,200 people, uh, what type of a skilling did you have to go through? um, for yourself? I mean, I know a lot of the hard skills are available through certification, through on-the-job training and stuff like that. But what about from your own capability to manage complexity and soft skills? What type of learning curve did you go through, Bindu?
Yeah, so right from a small team to a large team, the your learning is different styles of leadership. So when we started off, when we didn't have anybody, we didn't have talent enough. We brought in freshers from universities, and yeah, we there are teams within our competency teams who give them skills or who teach them skills, but that's not enough. We have to get in, mentor them. We have to get them job ready. So it's one thing about knowing a programming language or knowing something, but getting them job ready is a totally different thing, right? So you have to have that connect. You have to have be with people, get them to understand and allay fears because they're just out of college. They really don't know. They're nervous to get started with their first assignment. So that matters. You give them a 101 of what is I mean something that you cannot learn in books, something that what is your group standing for, what nature of projects will you anticipate as you go out after a few months of your training, and those are things that you have to mentor and get them on. And that was a smaller sized yet, and handling a smaller team, and from there the kind of when people are involved, different people come with different natures. So when you're involved with people, the way you handle people at a junior level when you have having a smaller team, to how you will handle it when you have a larger team, when you don't have the luxury of getting hands on and being one on one with all the like now for instance 170 members report into me, directly indirectly put together. So I can't meet all 170. It's not practically possible that with my job that I do, I all meet all of them. So how your leadership style will change is you will have your direct reports, a bunch of them, maybe 10 or 15, and you have to fill in your trust with them. You would have mentored them, you would have nurtured them, so you know what to expect out of them, and you leave put them put the trust in them that they will perform. And then through them is where you'll see the rest of the team. So whenever anything is wrong or right in the team, it bubbles up and comes back to you through your direct report. So there's a lot of difference in how you handle a larger team to how you are directly handling a smaller team. So that's a learning that I've had, and that's a learning that I have put in, apart from the technical knowledge and know-how, into successful executions.
Excellent. Um, I want to. I know we are such a lively conversation, and I'm just realizing that we are out of time. So I want any advice for the newcomers, Bindu, that you want to share based on your learnings and maybe missteps, if you will. And particularly, you are a career. You've worked in two organizations and also have had a very excellent career so far. So any pearls of wisdom that you can share?
Yeah, two things I'd like to share with people who are just coming in, because someday they will also grow to be seniors, will move to leadership roles. But I'll tell you something: you should remain, if you are a developer like I was, you should remain a core developer at heart. I still do C programming. I'm still hands-on with C programming. I still do DIYs on Arduino programming. So it need not be in that way, but whatever way you want to be, but have your touch with your skills, because even if you grow, you tend to get non-technical, you tend to get away from your technical work, because that's where your role will take you as you go. But be rooted, that is one. And the second is, particularly for women who are joining in as young girls, who join with a lot of energy and zeal into the industry, they remain so. But as the family kicks in, as responsibilities kick in, there may be times in the career when you feel like I have had times, everything has not been smooth. So I have raised two daughters. They are today 17 and 11, and they just didn't grow up magically. So I've had my share of troubles. So, and I know for sure that there will be times when you'll think that, is it really worth it? Is it really worth going on with your career like this, when you have to juggle so many things? And there may be a time in their lives when they'll think that, no, it's enough. I'll just give up, and I'll just come out of my career. But whichever way you want to do, maybe you want to take a short break and come back, or you want to keep it going and take it slow. Whichever way, just don't leave it. If you drop it there, it's not that the comeback is not possible. It is always possible. But keep it going, because maybe sometimes you'll have to slow down a bit. You maybe be like your peers. You may not have at that point be able to be in that a race of corporate race of moving up the ladder. That's not important, because your family is also important. So how are you going to balance and manage? But one thing is, you keep going, it will go on. There will be some way or the other. It may seem that it was the end of everything, but you should keep going, and it will take you through. And it'll take you through to success, and then you'll think, oh, this is all it was, is it? So I'm done with it, and now I'm fine, and I'm happy I did it. So that's my message for the girls who'll be women later, and who'll be mothers later, to keep going in their career, and not to be bogged down with small things that happen in life that can pull you back down.
Wow, excellent message. Stay true to your core coding skills or the software skills, and stay in the journey. In fact, I use the same thing that no, to win the race, you have to be in the race. I mean, it doesn't matter if you slow down, but you have to just stay put. I think that excellent message, Bindu. Thank you so much for your time, and wish you a very happy Women's Day.
Thank you. Wish you the same, Gayatri. Happy Women's Day. Bye.